Now, we use both these inputs, the EFAS and the IFAS, the external factor analysis statement and the internal factor analysis statement. We use these two statements to create the SWOT matrix. What is the SWOT matrix? The SWOT matrix is an opportunity, is a method of collating various strategic options that are open to the company. On one axis, we have the strengths of the company, the weaknesses of the company. On the other axis, we have the opportunities and the threats. Okay, right. This is our starting point. Strengths and weaknesses, opportunities and threats we have got through the EFAS and IFAS. Now, what do we do with this? The SWOT approach is to look at strategic options which arise when you use your strength to avail of an opportunity, or you use your strength to block a threat, or you overcome a weakness to avail of an opportunity, or you overcome a weakness to block a threat. These four methods of generating strategic options come up due to the SWOT matrix analysis. Let's look at some examples here, because that would make this whole subject, make this whole concept of the SWOT matrix much clearer. Let's look at the first cell where we use strengths to avail of an opportunity. Now, you will recall MRF, being the tire major that it is, had tremendous strength in the automobile industry. Now, in the early days before liberalization, which happened in the early 90s, before that, car was some kind of a lifetime possession, which required several repaintings to be done. Therefore, automobile paints, right, was a major market then, as it is now. MRF, keeping its clout in the automobile market in mind, decided to go into automobile paints, and there is the brand of MRF automobile paints called the Vapor Cure paints, which was an example of MRF using its strength in the automobile industry to avail of this opportunity. Or let's take another example. Now, all those in South India and people in other parts of India fond of South Indian food will recall the old days when any visit to Bangalore used to involve a visit to the MTR restaurant, because the MTR restaurant was synonymous with good South Indian food all across India. During the emergency, when all items were, the price of all items was controlled, MTR said it cannot run a restaurant if the prices of its products are controlled at very low rates. Therefore, they wondered what to do. They decided to use their strength for high quality food products, high quality South Indian food products, and go in for the MTR mixes, which have now made them famous. The idli mix and the dosha mix and the various MTR mixes that are available all arose because MTR decided to use its strength to avail of the opportunity of retail marketing. Now, let's look at this cell where a company overcomes a weakness and avails of an opportunity. Now, let's take Hindustan Lever. Hindustan Lever has a robust distribution chain in all the urban areas in India, right? It has probably lakhs and lakhs of dealers all across the country in the urban areas, in large towns and small towns. Now, as when Hindustan Lever found that the rural market was growing in India, in order to utilize this opportunity, it had to overcome its weakness that it did not have a distribution set up in the rural areas. Now, you cannot model your distribution setup in the rural areas in the same way in which you do it in the urban areas. You need to employ different techniques. So, Hindustan Lever innovated a chain of women representatives who would convince rural customers to buy Hindustan Lever products when they were available in shops in the rural areas. Now, this entire distribution method, right, Hindustan Lever overcoming its weakness of not having a presence in the rural area in order to avail of that opportunity, the opportunity of a rapidly growing rural market. Okay, right. Let's take another example. Take Walmart. Now, when Walmart entered Russia 20 years back, you will recall 20 years back communism, Marxism collapsed in Russia. At that time, Walmart entered Russia. Walmart found that the distribution system across Russia did not exist. They had to create a distribution system from scratch. This was a Herculean effort, but they overcome this weakness, the fact that they had to create a distribution system, and today they are one of the leading retail chains in Russia. Let's look at the third cell, where you use strength to block a threat, where a company uses its strength to block a threat. Well, let's go back to the MRF story. MRF, a market leader as far as tires in India were concerned, but they faced a threat when the Indian economy opened up 20 years back. MRF faced a threat that international tire brands like Michelin would enter India, and at that point in time MRF was not strong enough to combat these brands. So what MRF did was, MRF on their own approached Michelin and suggested that Michelin and MRF could enter into a joint venture in India, where Michelin could make use of MRF's huge market presence in India. MRF could make use of Michelin's excellence in product quality, right? So MRF used its strength in the Indian market to avoid a threat. Now, what happened a few years later is that maybe I think it was about 5-6 years later, at that point MRF was stronger, MRF products were better. The agreement with between MRF and Michelin, that agreement came to an end, and Michelin started competing separately in India. MRF started competing separately apart from Michelin, but then by then MRF was strong enough in terms of product quality to compete with Michelin. So MRF saw this threat, and MRF used its strength in the Indian market to overcome this threat. Now let's look at the fourth cell of the SWOT matrix. Here we have an interesting situation where we need to overcome weaknesses to block a threat. Now, when the Indian economy was liberalized in the early 90s, slowly foreign goods started coming into India and foreign brands became popular in India. Gradually, TV brands or overseas TV brands like LG and Samsung and so on, and Sony, and the overseas TV brands became, or rather gained increasing representation in the Indian market, and it appeared at one point of time that they may swamp the Indian brands, because the Indian brands in that controlled market of the old India, the Indian brands had paid no attention at all to R&D and product design innovation, right? This was their weakness. The weakness of the Indian TV companies was that they had paid no attention to R&D and product design and product innovation. Now, what did brands like Oneida and Videocon do? Now, these brands, they in turn focused extensively on R&D, on product innovation, and sure enough, in a matter of 5-6 years, they regained a significant part of their market share. So today you find a mix of both foreign TVs, like foreign TVs meaning foreign brands, overseas brands like LG, Samsung, Sony, and Indian brands like Videocon and Oneida and so on, right? So here is a situation where a company or companies, the Indian TV companies, they perceived a weakness and they overcame that weakness to block a threat, to block the threat of being wiped out from the Indian market.